All right, so today what we're gonna do is learn about isosceles triangles and equilateral equiangular triangles. So the first thing that is true, I'm gonna go down here and show you what an isosceles triangle looks like. So an isosceles triangle is a triangle that has two sides congruent, only two sides, okay? And when it has those two sides congruent, what happens is the angles that are across from those two sides are also congruent. That's one of the biggest things that we learned today. And then in addition to that, if you were ever told that you had a triangle with two angles congruent, you would know that that's isosceles also, because if these two angles are congruent, the sides across from them are also congruent. And like I said, that's a big part of the isosceles triangles. Now, just so you know what the different sides and angles are called in an isosceles triangle, the two sides that are congruent are called legs. The side that is not congruent is called the base. And then there's a rule with, like I just talked to you guys about, if these two sides are congruent, that makes these two angles congruent, and those are called base angles, okay? The two that are congruent are called base angles. Then you're gonna have a third angle that is not congruent, and that one they call the vertex angle, okay? Here's another example. If you look, these two are congruent sides, so they're legs. The side that's not congruent is a base. If these two sides are congruent, those two angles are congruent, and they're called base angles. And then up here, the angle that is not congruent is called a vertex angle, okay? All right, so let's go to this. This I've been talking about already, but there's an actual theorem that tells us this. And so again, if you have two sides congruent, the angles that are across from those two sides are also congruent. Okay, and then it works the other way. If you have two angles that are congruent, the sides across from them are congruent, okay? So now this is a part of what your homework will look like. Notice here I have this drawing, and they're asking us in part A, name two unmarked congruent angles. So to do that, you want to go to a triangle that has two congruent sides. And if you have two congruent sides, then you can say the angles across from them are congruent. So does anyone see, would it be the top triangle or the bottom triangle? So you're looking for a triangle that, if they want congruent angles, you're going to look for a triangle that has two sides marked. So do you guys get it's this bottom one? Okay. And if these are the two congruent sides, that makes this and this congruent angles. Okay. So we're going to say angle BCA is congruent to angle, and then it would be BAC. Okay. So BCA is congruent to BAC. Oh, by the way, could have I just named this one angle A? I could have. So if you had seen that, that one is just a single angle, so I could have named that angle A. Now they want us to go to that same diagram, and they want us to say what two segments are congruent that aren't marked. So what happens there is you're going to look for a triangle that has two angles marked, and you're gonna go to the sides that are across from them and mark them congruent. So these are my two angles. The side opposite this is gonna be congruent to the side opposite that. Okay, now it's truly going to work that all four of those are congruent, but we're not going to worry about that. So what we would say here is segment DB is congruent to segment CB. So DB is congruent to CB. All right. Now, if we look at this, it says name two unmarked congruent angles. So if you're naming angles, you want to find a triangle that has two sides marked. So do you guys get this huge triangle has the two sides marked? So then what we could do is say that the whole angle here is congruent to the whole angle here. So the angles that are across from those two would be congruent. So if they're looking for angles, look for two sides that are congruent and go opposite that. Now in these, I have to use three letters because there's several angles drawn at K and M. So I'm gonna need to use three letters. So I can say angle JML or JMK, they're the same. So I'm gonna say JML is congruent to, and then I could say JKL or JKM, or I could go the other way, LKJ, K would have to be in the middle. So I'm gonna say JKL. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is try to find two unmarked congruent segments. So for this part, I'm gonna get rid of these just so that it doesn't confuse us. And I'm gonna look at what segments can I mark. Do you guys see what I could do? What two segments would be congruent? So you wanna look for a triangle that has two angles congruent. And then the sides opposite those would be congruent. So it'd be MP and PK. Okay, MP and PK. All right. Now, if I look at this one, this is kind of the same thing. It's saying, if RV is congruent to RT right here, what are two congruent angles? So this is this whole side and this whole side. So the congruent angles would be this whole angle and this whole angle. We'd be looking at the big triangle, okay? Again, I would have to use three letters there because there's three different angles with the vertex of V. So I'm gonna say angle RVU or RVT. Either of those would be right, or you could say UVR or TVR. And then over here, I could say angle RTU, RTV, UTR, any of those would be good. Okay. Now, what we're going to do for the next part is they tell us that two sides are congruent, and they're saying RS right here is congruent to SV, which is right here. So basically what you're doing here, guys, is you're looking at this triangle because those are the two sides that they're marking. And then our angles that are congruent are gonna be the ones that are across from that. So here and here. Does everybody see that? So you go across from the two congruent sides. So here I have to use three letters again. R would have to be in the middle up here, so I could say angle VRS or VRU or URV, SRV, those would all work. So VRS is congruent to angle, and then this one, I could say RVS or SVR. So I'm gonna do RVS. Okay. Then, if we look for our next part, it says if angle SRT is right here, is congruent to STR right here, name two congruent segments. So this is the triangle. These two are the congruent angles, and that makes these two opposite that. Those would be the congruent sides. So it's always the sides across from those two angles. So I could say RS is congruent to ST or TS. Now let's go to this last one. It says if angle STV, this little one right there, is congruent to SVT, this little one right here, that means we're using this little triangle down here. What two segments would be congruent then? Can you tell? Yeah, VS and ST. Very good. So we would say VS, segment VS is congruent to segment ST. Okay? So that's what the beginning of the assignment is like. Okay? Now we're going to learn about equilateral and equiangular triangles. So here's the deal. An equilateral triangle looks like this. It has all three sides congruent. Lateral means sides, so it's equal sides. Equiangular would look like this. It would have all of these angles marked congruent. So equiangular means equal angles. Okay? Now let's go down here, and there's a theorem today that if you ever see a triangle that has all three sides congruent, you can automatically say all three angles are congruent. And then it works the other way. Because this is an if and only if theorem or corollary, that means that it works both ways. So if they instead said that all three angles were congruent, you can assume all three sides are congruent. Now, from what you guys know, the three angles in a triangle add up to what? 180. And if they're all equal, how many degrees would they be? 60, right? 180 divided by 3 is 60. Okay? So what this next theorem says is if you have an equilateral triangle, which means equal sides, you can automatically assume that all three angles are equal. Okay? All right, so now let's go here. So this says find the measure of angle R. That's this angle right here, okay? In this drawing, I want you to notice these two are equal. If those two are equal, what else does that tell us? Yeah, the base angles are equal, so P and R are equal, okay? Do you guys get if I called this X, that I could call this X, right? Now, what should these three angles add up to? 180, right? So there's two ways you could do this. You could go x plus 60 equals 180. X plus x is 2x plus 60 equals 180. Subtract from 60, and you'd get 2x equals 120. Divide by 2, and x is 60, okay? Now, I will tell you guys this. If you have one angle that's 60 and the other two angles are congruent, they're going to all three be 60, okay, automatically. But the other way, if you didn't know that, there's a shorter way that you guys could have done this, and that is, if you know this is 60, do you guys get that I could have gone 180 minus 60, which is 120, and I would know that those two are equal and add up to 120, so couldn't I divide it by 2? And 120 divided by 2 is 60. So either of those ways work, whatever makes more sense to you. Okay? Now it says find PR. Okay? So what we just found is that this is 60 and this is 60. If the three angles are 60, what does that tell us about the three sides? They're all equal. So if this one's 5 and this one's 5, isn't this one 5? Right? So down here, this is 5 centimeters. Okay. Now if I look at this one, they want us to find the measure of angle M right here. And hopefully you guys can see that these two angles are equal. Okay? So if I'm looking for this one and they're equal, this would be x2. So you could either use algebra and go x plus 120 equals 180. X plus x is 2x plus 120 equals 180. Then I'm going to subtract 120. And I get 2x equals 60, divide by 2, and x is 30. So each of these we found to be 30. So our answer here is 30. Okay? Now, if you like to do that the shortcut way, can anyone explain how we could have done it the shortcut way? 180 minus 120, and you can just punch this into your calculator, is 60. And then if these two equal 60, what would I do with the 60? Divide it by 2, and that is 30. So if you do it that way, you can just punch it right into your calculator. Okay? Then it says find PN. Anyone see how I could find PN in that one? What would the answer be? 11. If these two angles are equal, that makes these two sides equal. So it would be 11 centimeters again. Okay? So our answer down here is just going to be 11 centimeters. All right. So now let's go to this page. Okay, so when we do this, if we have all three sides equal, do we know what each of those angles is? What would they each be? They would all be 3x. You're right. Do I also know how many degrees they'd each be? They'd all be 60, right? Each of these would be 60. Because my three sides are equal, my three angles are going to be 60. So how I could find x is just go 3x equals 60, divide by 3, and x is 20. Okay? Then, does anyone see how we could solve for y? Yeah, couldn't we take this 2y minus 6 and set it equal to 8 because those two sides are equal? Then I would add 6, and I get 2y equals 14. And then divide by 2, and y is 7. Okay. We go down here. They want us to find the value of each variable, okay? So first of all, this angle is 4x minus 8. If these two sides are equal, okay, this side is equal to this side, do you guys get that this angle is congruent to that angle? Does everybody understand that? Now, if this is 4x minus 8, this is 4x minus 8. Okay? Now, here's the deal. When we go to do this, I could add up 4x minus 8 plus 4x minus 8 plus 4x minus 8 and set it equal to 180. And that would be fine. You can do it that way. But do we know what one of these angles would be? 60, right? If their three sides are equal and the three angles are equal, each angle would be 60. So what I would do there is I would just say 4x minus 8 equals 60. Add 8, and 4x would be 68. Divide by 4, and x is 17. Okay. Then what we would do is try to solve for y. Now when you look at that, notice this side is equal to that side and they both have a y in them. So I can just set those equal to one another, those two sides. 6y plus 3 equals 8y minus 5. Okay, so what I'm going to do is bring my 6y over here by subtracting 6y. And I get 3 equals 8y minus 6y is 2y minus 5. Then I'm going to add 5. And I get 2y equals 8. Divide by 2, and y is 4. Okay. And those are my answers then. Okay. I think I'm just going to finish this section today because we only have one page left. So, all right. Does anyone know what this angle would end up being? Not 60, but if these two are equal, doesn't that make these two angles equal? So if this is 2x, this is 2x. Now, what should those three angles add up to? They would add up to 180. Okay? And this one you might be best just doing the algebra. So 2x plus 2x is 4x plus 40 equals 180. Then I'm going to subtract 40, and I get 4x equals 140. Divide by 4, and x is, that would be, let me think, 35. So that would be my answer. Okay. Now if we look at this one, can anyone tell what I know about the two sides? They're equal. If these two angles are equal, these two sides are equal. So 2x plus 6 equals 3x minus 6. Now I'm going to bring this 2x over here by subtracting it. And I get that 6 equals x minus 6. And then I'm going to add 6. And I get x is 12. Okay? That's my answer. Now, these are angles, okay? And if these two sides are equal, that means angle A and angle C are equal. Angle A is 6x plus 6. Do you guys get then that angle C is 6x plus 6? Everybody understand that? Now, these three are all angles, so what would I do? What would I do with those three? Set them equal to 180. So I'd go 2x plus 6x plus 6 plus 6x plus 6 equals 180. Okay? 2x plus 6x plus 6x is 14x. Okay? 6 plus 6 is 12, and that equals 180. Okay? Then I would subtract 12, and I would get 14x equals, and this would be 168. Then I would divide by 14, and I would get x equals 12, I believe. Okay? All right. Now if I look at this one, notice these two are equal. So if that's 2x plus 3, this is 2x plus 3. Okay, there's actually three ways you could do this one. You could go 2x plus 3 plus 2x plus 3 plus 90 equals 180. Or if this is 90, what would these two add up to? 90, right? And the other way, if you thought of this, do you guys get if that's 90 and these two add up to 90 and are equal, how many degrees would each of them be? 45. So you could say 2x plus 3 equals 45. So any of those three ways works. I think I'm going to do it the long way, just in case you didn't notice the other thing. So we're going 2x plus 3 plus 2x plus 3 plus 90 equals 180. Okay? 2x plus 2x is 4x. 3 plus 3 plus 90 is 96. Then I'm going to subtract 96, and I get that 4x is 84. Divide by 4, and x is 21. Okay. Now if we look at E, do I know what I could call this angle? X. If these two sides are equal, these two angles are equal, so that's x. Then if I go 3x plus x, what should it equal? 180. So 3x plus 1x is 5x equals 180. Divide by 5, and x is 36. Okay? All right. I'm going to have you guys stay where you are today, and this is your assignment. Did you have Spanish first? Got it too? Do you only have it one try in 8th grade? Two tries. Is that what Mrs. Klein?